Hi everyone, this is Tammy with Life Began in a Garden. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make violet jelly using wild violets. So these are growing next to my house and there's a huge amount of them. They look very healthy, they're beautiful. Couldn't be any more pretty if I had planted them there myself. And so I was able to get all of the violets that I need to make the violet jelly just from this patch of them that's here. And for the jelly, all we need is just the flowers. But I also picked some leaves and I'm drying them to make a salve with them. And actually you can eat the violet leaves and the violet flowers. The wild violet does have a lookalike that is actually toxic. And this is the lookalike plant. And it really doesn't look like it except that the leaves do. Other than that, it has yellow flowers that don't look at all like the violet. But you do need to pick only when the violets are in bloom so that you see this flower. You will easily recognize it. If you look at the picture there of how the flower sits on the stem, it's nothing like the one that is called its lookalike. But don't pick them. Don't pick the leaves if you don't know for sure that it is the violet, because it could be the lookalike one, which is toxic. So this is where I am drying my leaves, and I will be using these to make the salve with later. And these are also edible, or they have many uses actually. So while you're already picking the flowers, grab you some leaves too. Okay, so for this jelly, we are going to need at least 2 cups of these flowers. And that is the most time-consuming part of making this jelly because it takes a while to pick them and get 2 cups worth. But that's what you need to make the jelly. And of course, if you've got time and you want to pick more than that, then you can just make more jelly. So you put the flowers once picked and look over them at least and make sure that they're clean. They don't have anything on them, or rinse them off. So you put them in a quart jar and then boil 2 cups of water if you have 2 cups of flowers, and pour it over the top of the flowers that are in the canning jar. And then once you've done that, put the lid on it, let it cool, and put it in the fridge. Leave it in the fridge overnight, and then take it out the next morning and strain it. And this is the color that your juice will be, or tea. The lemon is the preservative for the jellies, so don't leave it out. And once you add the lemon, as soon as you do, it changes the color from blue to this beautiful purple color. And this is the color that we will be using when we make the jelly. So get everything ready that you need, all your canning supplies, your jars and your lids, any utensils that you're using, make sure they're clean and sterile. And then get your ingredients ready. So you will need at least half a box of sure gel, depending on how much you're making. This is 24 grams, it's a half a box. And for 2 cups, that's what I'm using here. You need to make sure that you sterilize your jars in boiling water for at least 10 minutes, just to make sure that they don't have any bacteria on them. And then pour your juice that has the lemon in it already. Pour it into a pan that is deep enough so that when this starts boiling, it won't rise up over the top and spill out. So that's what I have here is the juice already poured in there, and it has come to a, well, it hasn't come to a boil yet, but as soon as you get it started on there, you add the pectin, and then you need to bring it to a full rolling boil, and that's a boil that doesn't stop boiling even while you're stirring it. And that's where it's at here, is that full boil. I usually let it boil for, I don't know, about a minute before I add the sugar, but that is the next thing that you will do. And you need to have your sugar already measured out and in a bowl and ready to add, so that when you get to this stage, you can just pour it all in at one time and you're not having to stop and measure it. So there's the sugar, and then you can stir the entire time that it's boiling, and this needs to boil for exactly 2 minutes. So using your phone or a stopwatch or something, or just pay attention to the time, but make sure that once this comes to a full boil again, you start timing it and you let it boil, stirring the whole time for at least, not at least, but for exactly 2 minutes. And that gives the pectin time, it gives it time to set up in there and make it gel the way it's supposed to gel. So in case you're wondering about the nutritional value of wild violets, they are rich in minerals like calcium and magnesium. They nourish the body with quality nutrients. The lower leaves, harvested in early spring, contain an impressive amount of vitamins A and C. Wild violets also contain anti-inflammatory and antioxidants that help neutralize damage from free radicals, and they help prevent chronic diseases. The plant also has medical value to it. I'm not going to go into all of those right now on how to make medicine using the wild violet, but both the leaves and the flowers have medical value and nutritional value. So this jelly, when you make it, has an awesome flavor. And the lemon that you add to it just enhances the flavor and makes it even better. There are many other uses for the flowers and the leaves also. You can make a violet honey, or violet lemonade, or violet vinegar using the flowers, or violet tea. You can use the flowers and the in your salad just as they are, and you can use the leaves to make a salve. So we are coming close to the end of the 2-minute boiling time, and I will be removing it from the stove and pouring it into a large measuring container that is glass. It's big enough to hold all of this, but also has a pour spout, and that will allow me to pour it into the jars easier than having to dip it out of this pan. Okay, so as you can see there in the pan, the boiling bubbles came up to the top of that pan. They did not boil over, but any more than that, and they would have. So make sure that you use a pan that is deep enough to prevent them from boiling over. So here I have poured it into my measuring cup, and from that I'm going to pour it directly into the jars. And these are the little half-size jelly jars, and I'm using them so I can give them as gifts during the year or put them in Christmas baskets that I do for Christmas time gifts. So this makes it easier to pour them in, and you can see the level there that I'm pouring it in at. I go up to where the band starts and maybe a little bit past it. And try to make sure that you don't drip any of it on the jars themselves or on the edges of the jar. And this was the end of it. It wasn't enough to fill up that jar, but that's great for me because that gives me one to sample with. Now, once you have got the jelly in all of the jars, you need to use a wet paper towel and wipe the edges of all the jars. Even if you don't think that you got anything on them, still wipe around the edges of them, because this helps the lid to seal properly. So take the time to do that, and then once you've got that done, it's time to put your lids on. And you can just pick them up by hand, or I've got this little magnetic stick, has a magnet on the end of it, that will pick up the lids, and then here I'm using that to place them on, but sometimes I don't use that and I just use my hands. So however you need to do it, just lay them on top of the jars and then go back and make sure that they're properly seated on the jar. And once you have all of the lids on there, and that's how many jars that it made if you don't count the one that's just partially filled. So that is only 5 half-sized jelly jars. So that's not a lot, but that was only 2 cups of flours. So just so you have an idea that that's how much you'll get for it. But even though it takes a long time to pick those flours and you don't get a whole lot from it, the jelly that you do get is absolutely delicious and beautiful, and it makes a great gift. So it's worth the time. So when you screw the lids on, I said it was 5, but it was actually 6 jars. When you screw the lids on, there I'm just barely putting them on because I'm holding the camera in the other hand. But before you put them in the canner, you need to pick up the jar and actually screw it on finger tight. So that means you're holding onto the jar with one hand and the lid with the other, and turn it until it gets to the point that it stops, and don't keep turning it after that. And then once you have that done, it's time to put them in the canner. So when you put them in there, make sure that the water is at least 2 inches above the top of the jars before you put the lid on to can them. And make sure before you start the timer that the water is actually boiling. So once it's done and you remove them from the canner, allow the jars to sit undisturbed for 24 hours to seal and for it to set up right. And then check all of them to make sure that they have sealed. And if you have one that hasn't sealed, then just put it in the fridge. And this is the partial jar that I had. I want to show you what a beautiful jelly it is and how great it's set up. It's perfect stage. And it tastes absolutely wonderful. I do hope you will give these a try, because even though you may be regretting it while you're picking them, you will not regret it. When it's finished, you will be happy that you did this. Make sure once they have sat there that you label them and date them. I hope you have a wonderful day. May God bless you, and see you later.